Verbi irregolari italiani. Yes, we're talking about irregular verbs in Italian for beginners, but this one is kind of like a tough one. So let's begin. Cominciamo. I'm Manu Venditti, your Italian teacher here on YouTube, helping you become a little bit better with Italian as a beginner, and hopefully I will be guiding you all the way to fluency if you check out our website on italmedisi.com. Today we're looking at irregular verbs. Now, we've already seen the whole concept of conjugation. You're familiar with conjugating and why you need to do it and how to do it for are verbs. Now, are verbs is a group of extremely regular verbs. There's a couple that are irregular, so you'll see them today. They end in are, but they are irregular, meaning they don't behave like you learned. But overall, we're going to look at a bunch of verbs with different endings, and these are verbs that you just need to memorize. So, but why do they exist? They exist in every language, and the reason a verb becomes irregular over time is because it's used a lot. Think of a verb like oxidate. You don't use it every day, and so that verb will probably never be shortened to something else. But the verbs that are the most useful are the ones that we say a lot. And so we always end up changing the most useful verbs into irregular, and that's what we did in English as well. You know, to go, we go a lot. So to go is irregular. Now, not in the present tense, because it's I go, you go, he goes. You have to spell it with go with the es, but it's irregular because we say yesterday I went. We didn't say yesterday I goed, like you would say I worked. So yesterday I went. Oh, she's gone shopping. So gone, it's a strange way of dealing with to go because it's irregular. Another irregular one in English is to read. Did you read the news? Yes, I read the news. Weird, right? To run, you know, these are all irregular verbs because we use them a lot. I go, I went, I have gone. But then we have regular verbs, like to work. Are they regular? Because they behave like any other verb. So you could predict how to work works because it's the same as another regular verb. So to work, present tense would be I work, he works. Past tense would be I worked, he worked, we worked. Present perfect, I have worked, she has worked. Like you can predict it. You don't need to know how irregular it is. That's how Italian verbs work. So the ones that I tell you they are regular, once you learn how they work, I'm sorry for this repetition of work, then you know. But the irregular ones, you just have to become more familiar with how they are irregular. So you're going to have to memorize them. And the best part is that you don't really, for some you have to memorize the whole conjugation. But for some, you need to understand how they are irregular, and then you will have a pattern in your head that kind of lump together a bunch of verbs that do the same thing when they are irregular. So you'll be okay. So here are some irregular verbs in Italian. Essere is the verb to be. As you can see, it ends with ere. We haven't covered verbs in ere yet. You will learn them in this free beginner series. But essere is irregular like it is in English, to be. To be is actually the best verb in English to show you irregularity because I am, you are, he is. 3 different forms for 3 different subjects. That's hard, right? So you've already seen that in Italian. Now, avere. Avere means to have. Actually, if you throw a H before avere and you remove re, then you have to have in English. Like, look at that visually. Editor, please add H there. Fare. Fare means to do. So here's an are verb, but it's irregular, so it will not work the way you would expect. Why not? Well, if you took fare, you removed are like you do for parlare. You're left with f. So then you would have fo, fi, fa. Fiamo. It's just too short. It's just too short, all right? So it will not work like that just because it's too short. Dare is another are verb that means to give, and it's irregular for the same reason. It's too short once you get rid of are. So dare. Andare, are verb, it means to go. Andare. Venire, to come. You can see these verbs, you can tell that they're very common. These are daily verbs. So they might be hard for the first weeks, months, but then you will have these down because you use them every day. Potere. Potere is the idea of can or being able to. So can, potere. Dovere. must, again, super important verb. Volere, it's wanting. Sapere is to know, sapere. Dire is to say, dire. And uscire is to go or to go out. Very useful verbs, as you can see. They're all irregular in their own way. Some of them have similar patterns. Some are pretty unique, like uscire is kind of unique. So, tips for learning irregular verbs. Learn them together. Once you see that one verb is irregular and it's similar to another irregular verb, put them together in a bucket in your brain so that you know that they all kind of do the same thing. And this is the tip that I give anybody learning verbs in general, like regular or irregular. Learn them in mini meaningful sentences. Don't just conjugate the verb. Conjugate the verb feeling that, oh, I'm doing this thing. So have a full sentence. So all the verbs that I showed you are all listed and conjugated in the supporting resources that you can find in Beginner Italian Level 1, which is the full course where we're kind of extrapolating the content from. And of course, you can find them anywhere online, but just understand that those are irregular, and so you will have to learn them. Let me do a couple of them just because I'm nice. Let's conjugate potere, just to give you an idea of why, like how does it sound when it's irregular. Potere, can or being able to. Io posso. Can you hear how posso is not super related to potere? Because if you conjugate it regularly, you would say poto. You would have pot and then you put o, poto, that doesn't exist. So posso. Io posso. Tu puoi. Pretty different and difficult to pronounce. Tu puoi, you can. Lei o lui può. Può. He can. She can. Lui può. Noi possiamo. We can. Voi potete. You guys can. Loro possono. As you can see, it's a little bit of a mess. But guess what? This verb conjugates similarly to other verbs. And so once you learn those, you will put them together in your brain, right? So, and we're done for today. Keep watching all the other lessons for this series because you will have the strongest foundation to then go ahead and learn Italian and become fluent, hopefully. Ciao, ciao. Buon studio.